Have you ever wondered what jobs are projected to grow most over the next 5 to 10 years and what skills might prove most useful in that same time period? Well, in this video, I'm going to be sharing precisely these findings from recent reports and, spoiler alert, some of the things might shock you. So the World Economic Forum released the Future of Jobs report in October of 2020, and within that they reveal the top 20 roles they figure would grow quickest, as well as the 20 jobs likely seeing the biggest falls in demand. They arrived at these 20 by asking diverse organisations across 26 different countries how their work was changing. So in first position, it's data analysts and scientists. Perhaps not surprising if the Internet of Things really does take off in the way that it's projected to, resulting in over 75 billion internet-connected devices globally by 2025. So these are roles which interpret existing data to draw meaningful conclusions, using tools like Excel, SQL, Tableau for visualizations, R and Python for slightly more involved work. Data scientists and engineers, meanwhile, do slightly more advanced versions of the work that data analysts do, using tools like algorithms, advanced statistical techniques, and sometimes machine learning too, to focus on making more predictive models, say to automate price changes on airline ticket websites according to supply and demand. And data overlaps with other roles on the top 20 list too. Big data is the obvious one, but many roles depend on data, from digital marketing and software developers, while other roles like information security analysts and database professionals, well, they manage and secure this vast amount of data. And there are also a number of roles relating to automation in the top 20. The 20 roles projected to see the largest declines in demand are characterized by either being manual or having repetitive and predictable elements, essentially making them easier to automate. So we can see here that data entry clerks, bank cashiers, stock keeping clerks are vulnerable since most people input their own data into systems now, and it's automatically maintained by, say, finance systems. And it may surprise some of you to see accountancy in that list of roles that may see the quickest declines to 2025 and beyond, but it's precisely because it is somewhat predictable, systems and rules based, that makes it easier to automate, and customer service because, well... That said, I am surprised to see relationship managers on this list. Those who maintain relations between organisations, because this is neither manual work nor is it repetitive or predictable in any way, and for that reason I'm also surprised to see training and development plus sales on this list. I'll be honest, I'm not sure what to make of that, but if you think I'm missing something, and I must be, let me know in the comment section down below. I'd love to know your thoughts. So that's the quick take. I'm really glad to say the report goes much deeper, way beyond those top 20, because there are literally tens of thousands of roles projected to see healthy growth to 2025 and beyond. Here we can see the report breaking down some of those areas, so content production, for example, being broken down into content writer and producer, which is helpful as they are and they can be standalone jobs. Another thing I find fascinating in the report is how the labour market might flex to accommodate these growing areas, e.g., whether this means people transferring existing skill sets or developing new ones. So sticking with content as a destination job of tomorrow, we see a big inflow from traditional media, communication and marketing, which makes sense, right? And there's a big overlap in skills. But there's not always this overlap in skills between older and newer roles. And we can see it clearer here, with 50% of entrants to data and AI being sourced from areas with not many similarities at all. So they're not necessarily coming in with the skills they need. Okay, so does this mean we should rush out and learn SQL, Tableau, R, Python, machine learning to best future-proof ourselves? This is where it gets super interesting, because the answer is no, or at least not necessarily. See, the top 15 skills for 2025 identified by the World Economic Forum lean towards analytical thinking and problem solving, with a role to play for active and engaged learning, which overlap with key themes around innovation, originality, and initiative, with other distinctly human skills like creativity, social influence, and persuasion featuring prominently too. If we're looking for a common way of describing these in-demand skills, then a good way might be the growth mindset. It's a term coined by psychologist Carol Dweck to describe individuals who believe their talents can be developed, be that through hard work, strategies, input from others, and they pursue that growth. Now, there's significant overlap with McKinsey's research too. They identify 56 of the fastest growing skills for the future, focusing on many human qualities like empathy and storytelling, sitting alongside structured problem solving and crossover areas like digital ethics. So how do we reconcile this seeming contradiction between the jobs of the future and the skills projected to be highest in demand? E.g., wouldn't we expect to see, say, programming way high up on that list of in-demand skills? I think there are two factors at play here. I think the organisations responding to the World Economic Forum and McKinsey, they may be quite satisfied with the technical skills of their existing employees, and perhaps they see more room for improvement in their ability to use knowledge to solve things in new ways, maybe to work better between systems, to be more adaptable. And second, maybe it speaks to our own assumptions about what might be required in those jobs of the future. So were I to be interested in a role in AI, I might downplay my skills which are actually quite useful, like creative problem solving, and I might play up those skills I feel relatively weaker in, like algorithm writing. But what if you simply wanted to know what skills to learn today that would keep the most number of doors open to you in your future? Well, I got you covered. Here, the World Economic Forum showcased the top 19 skills that cut across a range of fast-growing job clusters, or put another way, the skills to learn if you want the best coverage of fast-growing sectors in coming years. Interestingly, marketing is doing really well, and we can see it's because it cuts across data and AI, so all those cookies we leave sprinkled around, to people and culture, because what is marketing if it's not a deep level understanding of who we are, what we want, and what we want to project to others about ourselves? And it's for that reason I think product development and sales all naturally tie in as well. There are more of the familiar skills further down the list too, with entrepreneurship, retail and graphic design, which is perhaps reassuring because we needn't necessarily change what we want to do. Okay, so what if you're feeling curious about pursuing a career in one of those fastest growing areas or learning some of those high in-demand skills of the future, but perhaps you're feeling it's too much of a stretch, maybe you feel like you've left it too late? I have some really good news for you. Here we see 16 randomly selected skills, and a 1.0 next to it shows that people moving into that sector or joining it for the first time are already fully skilled in that area. They're good to go. And what's remarkable is just how low some of those numbers are, 0.19 for data science. Even if we now look at those skills requiring the highest level of mastery before joining, the skills gap between those newly joining the area and those already in it is large. This means you definitely don't have to be the finished article, and perhaps most encouraging of all is the number of days needed to achieve mastery at a skill, which is defined as being in the top 80% of those assessed for the skill. This is amazing. I'm really psyched about this because it means we can pursue opportunities a lot wider than we might otherwise have thought. Those gaps between where we are now and where we need to be typically aren't as big as they feel, which brings us to how we develop those skills that might mean most to us. Okay, so please know that this video is not sponsored in any way, and what follows are places that I consider to be good for developing and learning skills, where good means it's accessible, it's good value for money, or maybe even completely free, but most importantly, it's effective. Now, if you have favourites that have worked for you that I haven't mentioned, I'd love to see them in the comment section down below. It would be great if we can learn from each other. So first up, Google's professional certification. Launched earlier in 2021, typically taking around 3 months full-time to complete or 6 months part-time, in partnership with Coursera, there are currently 5 courses focused on the skills that Google anticipates needing most. So there's data analytics, UX design, project management, and IT support. It costs around $300, and you can use those skills anywhere. So definitely not just at Google. You get to do practical work, and they support you into getting your first job. But perhaps the obvious limitation here is that there's only a really limited selection of courses. So more broadly now, Coursera, along with the likes of edX, which has free open online courses from Harvard, MIT, are great for getting exposure to far broader skills. So not just the likes of digital marketing, say, but a lot of those non-technical skills like communication, sales, negotiation. You might have guessed that I hate the term soft skills, and it's because these skills are anything but soft. They're the hardest to master and simply the hardest to systematize. I also like Skillshare and of course YouTube for amongst the most accessible learning, often with non-traditional and brilliant teachers, some of whom have their own Skillshare courses. While for a lot of those non-technical skills, they're often best developed through practice, so through doing, but also watching others doing them as well. 2 specific things might be useful here. Number 1, putting yourself in situations that give you the best chance of developing exposure to those skills. Say it's written communication skills you're looking to hone, there'll be a volunteer role where you can practice that skill. Like on the UN Volunteers website, there are lots of opportunities that could fit the bill that are refreshed frequently across a whole range of skills. Second, the Harvard Competency Dictionary can give us a framework to think about how we actually have these skills, as well as their subcomponent parts. It's a document that can help us look at situations from lots of different angles, and it helps develop our self-awareness. So now we come to some really important caveats to help us make contextualized sense of what we've learned about the future of jobs and skills. First up, automation. Often spoken about as a kind of the robots are coming for our jobs, there's evidence automation will create lots more jobs than it destroys, and that's before the view that jobs themselves are already incorporating automation within them. So a car assembly worker now is doing a pretty different job to that of 40 years ago, and the same is also true for, say, accountants, although in less obvious ways. Second, the future is only ever a theory, so it's worth taking some findings with a pinch of salt. In fact, studies show that most predictions are merely extensions of what's going on currently. My favourite example of this is a guy named Sir Percival Lowell, a prominent scientist in the early 20th century who insisted that Mars must have intelligent life because he could see channels riven into its surface, which he presumed were canals. Now, the fact that at the time of his writing the Panama and Suez canals were being built and they were thought to epitomize high-tech civilization almost certainly influenced him, so always handle predictions with care. Third, don't feel limited by a top 20 list of roles or a top 19 list of skills. There are literally tens of thousands of roles projected to grow to 2025 and beyond. So there's definitely room for you to be you, to pay attention to what you pay attention to, and to move towards it. You don't need to learn a skill or do a role just because it's near the top of a list. Do it because you really want to, because you're curious or because you want to learn. And remember, you're a lot more flexible than you might realize. Do that with a learner's or a growth mindset, and your future's going to be golden. That's it from me for this week. I'll catch you next time.